Hello, and welcome to the CAC's Conversations between and among artists near and dear to us. Today's edition features two very special choreographers, Kyle Abraham and David Roussève. I'm Laura Pritchard, Director and Curator of Performing Arts at the Contemporary Arts Center, and thanks so much for tuning in. Kyle's company, A.I.M, which was formerly Abraham in Motion, brought his work Pavement to New Orleans in December 2013. Inspired by John Singleton's film, Boys in the Hood, the piece took place on a basketball court, which was set up in the CAC's warehouse, marking the first use of that space for performance. Since that time, Kyle has gone on to wide acclaim, choreographing works for Alvin Ailey, American Dance Theater, Wendy Whalen, New York City Ballet, and for ABT soloist Misty Copeland, as well as touring with his own company throughout the US and abroad. We were very much looking forward to welcoming the company back to the CAC on May 8th and 9th, but due to COVID-19, that presentation could not take place. We're working to find a new date, and we'll let everyone know as soon as we're set. Quick bios. Kyle grew up in Pittsburgh and has studied and performed a wide range of both dance and music, from classical to street forms. He received a 2013 MacArthur Award and has also been singled out by the Doris Duke Foundation, the New York Dance and Performance Awards, and Jacob's Pillow, among others. We're also joined by David Roussève, whose company Reality performed his stunning work Halfway to Dawn in April 2019. Based on the life of Billy Strayhorn, Halfway to Dawn is a poignant, but ultimately joyous celebration of this composer's long unknown contributions to the work of Duke Ellington. Both Kyle and David are on faculty at UCLA, transplants to Los Angeles. Home has always been a recurring motif in the lives and the work of numerous artists. I think dancers in particular tend to be nomads, going wherever the work is, which is often far from home. At this challenging moment, we wonder how you locate yourself when you're asked to distance from others. How do physical movers, dancers, find themselves creatively when the only outlets for public connection are digital? We look forward to how these and other questions are being considered by two of the leading figures in contemporary dance today. Welcome, Kyle and David.
So it's really great getting this opportunity to speak with both of you. David, as you know, I'm a huge fan. And Lori, I'm a huge fan and have been so grateful for our connection over the years, from your time at Dance Space Project to now your time here at the CAC. The first time that the company performed at CAC, as you mentioned, was with Pavement. And we're really hopeful that we'll be able to return, knowing that our dates have been massively affected by COVID. When we first came, we presented Pavement. I believe we were the first company to have our work performed in the warehouse space, which is really exciting to see kind of how it's continued to shift and morph since then. And of course, David, I'm really curious to see, hear from you what that experience was like for you being in that space. And for audience members that may not know, David and I have so many things in common. One that a lot of people may not know is that my grandfather was actually from Louisiana. So that's like a whole other parallel. But I was first introduced to David's work when I was a student at SUNY Purchase. And the first time I got to perform his work was when I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, dancing in a company called the Dance Alloy, performing just insanely beautiful work called Love Stories. David has been someone that I've looked up to for, I'd say, a lifetime, but I mean, I'm only 20, so,
Well, I'm only 30, so that works out.
Yeah, that works out. I mean, we both are teaching at UCLA in the World Arts, Cultures, and Dance program, a program that if it wasn't for David, I really wouldn't have had this wonderful opportunity to be on faculty there. So I'm really grateful for that. We both started at the university, I'd say at 39, but again, I'm 20 and he's 30, so I don't know. think about that as you like, audience. Yeah, I don't know, the parallels continue to run deep, and we'll probably address more and more of them as we go on. But I think the thing that's going to be a good segue here is to just expand upon both of our experiences performing at the CAC.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Well, first of all, I'm an enormous fan of yours as well. Just such beautiful work. And what makes me feel at home as a viewer is when, I love just ferociously beautiful, resonant dancing, but I also love work that has something to say. And literally, sometimes when I sit there and watch the work, I feel at home as a viewer. It really resonates for me on a different plane, and that's what I get from your work. So I thank you for that as a viewer. And then, yeah, my company was at CAC New Orleans. First of all, I was there as a soloist. I want to say in the late 80s at the older space. They were actually just opening that space, their former space. And I was there with a group of soloists from PS 122 in New York. It's a performance, an avant-garde performance space there, and we were touring. I was me, Blue Man Group, and a couple of other people. And I was super happy to be there. And then fast forward to last year, 2019, and it was really great to be back at that just stunning warehouse space. And I have to say that performing in New Orleans, which has become a theme for me in the age of COVID, but it felt like a home. Even though performing at the CAC and performing in New Orleans really felt like I was coming home, even though that's not my hometown. And it forced me to think, or gave me a chance to think of the nature of home. And my father was born and raised in New Orleans. My parents met at Xavier. So half my family, the roots are in New Orleans. And obviously the university, Xavier, and the city as a whole, we grew up hearing amazing stories about New Orleans and visiting my grandparents and my father's family at least once a year. And so, but it was never formally my home. It was my ancestors' home. But then being back in New Orleans for the performances, it was really amazing to be in the city, to see places I had seen as a child, to be back in a theater that had presented me, although the brick and mortar had changed, the people, the intention, and the purpose behind CAC New Orleans was still beautifully moving along. And it really felt like a homecoming of sorts. And Xavier, there's a Roussève scholarship there that my grandparents started. And just a ton of people from Xavier came. I was there with a friend also, and we were able to visit different parts of the city, and how much it felt like a homecoming to me, professionally and personally, even though it was never officially my home, really made me realize that home is, can be a brick and mortar, it can be a building, it can be the place that we live and that we call our nesting place, but it's also something that resides within us. And I had that really strong response to being back in New Orleans. And I think that's become a through line for me as I think about art making spaces professionally as our home, meaning there's studio space. Soon I will, and the presenters and the spaces we perform in are a sense of like a brick and mortar home, but creativity for me is a personal home. As in, that's where I house, that's a real reflection of my identity and who I am. And so dance for me provides kind of a brick and mortar home professionally, but it also provides the identity that's at the core of my being, which really ultimately is what you have to return to when the brick and mortars aren't around anymore. And that for me has become really important in the age of COVID and how home and artistic home are being redefined. Is that true for you as well, Kyle? Meaning, how is the whole nature of home or creativity being redefined for you or being augmented?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's such a precarious thing for me to think about home, especially as someone who's made a dance called Dearest Home that's looking
Yeah.
at that kind of topic in a way. Yeah, I don't know, I've always felt so transient, and I've always tried to figure out what it means to have roots somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
currently in a Airbnb right now.
Right.
I'm not even in my home, wherever that would be. So it's something that I've always struggled with, for sure. I think in this age that we're in right now, I think the struggle for me is to just try and be present wherever I am and not get so
Yeah.
caught up in the unknown. Because I think what's happening for me is, especially in this kind of like Airbnb month to week kind of setup, is I don't really have a sense of when I will go to New York to work with my company.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, with the rehearsal aspect in mind, how am I really supposed to be diving in a process that's really rooted in love and community?
Right.
It's not about the absence of community. I feel like I've made works like that before. This one isn't that. This is like supposed to be a celebratory work and experience. So I'm definitely struggling,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And we're both also, we both teach at UCLA. And while my real creative home is touring and visiting spaces nationally and internationally and presenting the work to audiences, that has a real down-home feel to me. UCLA is my community base artistically and in terms of teaching in Los Angeles. And again, the brick and mortar space is not available to me right now. And so for a while, I was feeling profoundly homeless. Even though the past year, as you know, I've been really I moved into a new home or house in Los Angeles, and I'm trying to work on making that house into my home. And it felt like right when that was working, or I was starting to feel at home, COVID happened. And what it brought up for me was, where is my creative home if I can't be at UCLA in the studios? Where is my personal home if everything seems upended, and everything that seems stable, including homes, it seems like it's one step away from not being there. It's a reality that any of us could, and many people have lost their houses and their sometimes a sense of home. And so I'm really grateful and aware of that, and aware that that could be true for any of us. And so what it forced me to do was think, I can't go to the gym and I can't go in the studio, so I'm doing yoga daily again. And that actually started to return me to something I felt throughout my choreographic career, but especially early on, the body as a place of home. And also I've been meditating again, and again, redefining what creativity means, writing, conceptualizing pieces now that I can't go in the studio. And what that has brought up for me, maybe in a positive way, is that a house is where you live. A home, though, actually resides within you. And I've been trying to focus on that. And for me, it's creativity. It's returning to my body as actually the one true home that our identities and spirits truly have. So I think that's been almost a positive for me in realizing that home is something that ultimately is within, including creativity, which is for me the real home. That's how I most express what lies deep within. But it has been a time of redefinition.
Yeah, I mean, we've had to kind of redefine what rehearsals should be and could be in this process.
Right.
The company, we meet, seems like maybe twice a week, but on Fridays we do a discussion. Earlier in the week, there would have been maybe a film or a reading or something that gets passed around for everyone to kind of like take in, and then we spend 2 hours just talking about it and talking about how it can relate to our new project in some way. I think honestly, I feel like I'm at a place where I'm not feeling like generating more material, even for the dancers to be like
Yeah.
following along or to be sending them, because anyone that knows me knows that like if you give me too many options, I'm just I'm stuck. So I don't want any more options. Yeah, and we actually have there's like 2 other works that are, you know, going on at the same time, but we can't keep generating.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to, as you're saying, like find these other ways. You know, I've studied. That's one of the things I've always loved about my time in Los Angeles, studying with my teacher here, Chris Reed, is my yoga instructor, and taking his classes online now that this is happening. But to be honest, it's actually been really hard to find this other level of confidence that is really necessary in not only body awareness, but in growth. When I'm doing different poses now, I think there's something about it that just like, I just feel kind of defeated. And so it actually makes it impossible before we even get to that next sequence.
Yeah.
So I'm really kind of struggling with that in any kind of movement practice these days. I gotta shake it up.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'll be curious to see what the long-term effect is, if there is one. And I actually think in one way or another that there will be, like there'll be some sort of an effect that this time has professionally on the creative world and what it means to be. I make dance films, but also the root of my work though is still in live performance. And I think that it remains to be seen what effect, if any, again, long-term, living in an era of COVID would have on live performance, because I think that would have really big implications for everyone. And again, maybe there will be small long-term effects. But in the meantime, how to remain a creative. There's one thing about finding your creativity within you. The other one is about like having an actual development process. In terms of what it means in terms of the nuts and bolts. We finished touring my latest piece, Halfway to Dawn, in fall of 2019. And then we were going to Cuba, and we got a grant to go to Cuba in April of this year. And of course, heartbreaking. That was going to be our final shebang of a performance. A last time to say goodbye to the work. And to each other, because as much as creativity becomes a home, the dancers become, and the whole community around the work becomes a family. But of course, COVID meant that we didn't have that sense of closure, because the festival was postponed for a year, and it's unknown whether or not we'll be able to remount the piece and bring it back in a year. But what I had always planned on doing was taking some time, not off, but to really percolate on what I wanted to do next creatively. There's a film and a live theater piece, both. I had just started going into rehearsals with a dancer from my company, Kevin Lee, and also a couple of students from UCLA to really start excavating new ideas for a live piece. And then COVID happened. And so I'm back to doing my own sort of one-on-one work, so to speak. Me, myself and I work around what a next piece can be. But I think going into the studio and actually having a physical process, when ultimately that's what we do, is going to be a big challenge for me. The last thing I would say, I have a very good friend, Ann Carlson, who's doing a piece on a European company now, and they're in the studio there, and it's a duet, a husband and wife team. So they are, social distancing is not an issue for them. They live together. And she actually watches them on Zoom and gives them notes and constructing the work. And so that's really interesting, that it heartens me. I think that you can do that. But what's key is that she met with them in person last fall for a bit of time and developed material and got to know them then. I think we're all exploring, what does it mean to start a piece on Zoom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this new work of mine, it's an Untitled Love. It's this D'Angelo work. It was set to premiere June 3rd. That, of course, is not happening anymore.
Wow.
But I was also in that really like that most exciting part where as a maker, as you know, it's like right before premiere where you ask all those important questions and see if you're meeting
Yeah.
like anything that you had put forward. Like, what was the narrative that I wrote when I was putting forward this project?
Right.
Am I still staying true to that narrative? And now I'm just kind of like twiddling my thumbs because I can't have that experimentation in the way that I'd like at this point.
Right. Yeah.
But on the other side, I think there's I'm actually able to focus a little bit more on the production aspect of some things.
Right.
Some of my commission projects, I've had meetings with the production team and are able to kind of set things in motion for scenic ideas to get built. Of course, not for my modern dance company, but for maybe like a larger company that
Right.
has a lot more resources with like a whole a whole
Right.
team to build scenic looks and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting because it's just occurring to me that, you know, art making exists on all these different levels. There's kind of the initial impulse, and then there's kind of the nuts and bolts of building a piece, going into the studio, working with your collaborators. And then there's kind of the bigger arc of purpose and intention for a specific piece. But then there's, as an artist, like there's an even bigger and like final arc that I tend to focus on a lot, which is kind of more philosophical, like why are you doing this with your life? What is the nature of creativity? Does it still inspire you to the core? And it feels like in a positive way, COVID has forced, because I keep looking for some shred of not what's positive about this time, but at least what can we bring forward that will allow us to grow as artists and human beings. And that's one for me, is that any time that you get to question what you're doing and why you're doing, and then recommit or move on if you find that you aren't able to answer those questions in ways that are fulfilling. But I appreciate that COVID really brings about questions around what's the real nature of home and creativity, and why am I doing this, and why it's important to keep doing it through COVID. Like I feel like the broader arc of commitment and purpose and kind of the philosophical, personal and philosophical underpinnings around art making and how art can change the world. I feel stronger than ever about those things, and COVID has actually made me feel stronger about those things, including human contact, including bringing people together in a theater. But the nuts and bolts of it has been profoundly challenged. So ironically, the commitment and the drive and the like, why are we doing this is even clearer, but the how we do it is a bit challenged.
Yeah, I think I'm. I need some of your positivity for one, but I think I'm also struck with, there was something you had said a little while ago that had me thinking about intimacy, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
even so, if you're someone who, like us, makes work that is really intimate, what does that mean in a way that like actually makes that happen on the stage when audiences need to maybe be in larger theaters with that much space between them?
Right.
Does the work still maintain its kind of like intimate aesthetic intention?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is it to be shifted and changed in the way in which we are directing, let alone choreographing? And does that still make it the same work? Or are we making a totally different work? I think I'm kind of like trying to really wrap my head around how we look at intimacy once we return to the stage.
Yeah, boy, I'm really glad you said that, because it occurs to me that for both of us, that's such a core part of our work. Like, how do you share, even having a conversation with ourselves on stage and with the viewers is a really intimate act. And then I think the themes of our work are so much around intimacy and creating empathy and having not only conversation, but deeply felt conversations. That's also something that we both share really strongly. And boy, that's a really great question. When you, just in a practical way, when you have, at best, you know, some couples sitting 6 feet away, and for the most part, individuals sitting 6 feet away. So that if you're, what's always been so beautiful from the stage and from the audience, from the stage is looking out and seeing an audience of people who have come together to be shoulder to shoulder. There's something about the collective coming together and the proximity to each other. Like seeing this from the stage is different from seeing this from the stage with the viewers. It'll be interesting to see in terms of how we're able to create intimacy and make it percolate on the stage, and also more importantly, for the viewer, how that's going to happen. I keep thinking I really want to go see a movie, but I'll be sitting 6 feet. It'll be safe. If
that doesn't bother me at all, because you know I don't like no talkers.
Yeah.
but with regards to the stage, though, I think part of the issue for me is, one of the things that I've always said with what we do is that I'm really interested in not only the person that goes to the corner store that is in my show, in my audience, but also the person that owns a corner store and someone that lives across town. I think there's something about sitting in that close proximity, the way in which someone's body language responds to something, or hearing someone, especially in my community, you hear a couple, okay, you hear all that in the audience, and someone that's not a part of that culture, trying to make them understand it in a way that they don't feel excluded is really important, because I think that ultimately not only expands the community, but it continues, as you were saying, to build that empathy. So I think I'm really curious to see how we can find that again in this current climate, and or in the months and even years to come. I think the other, sorry, I don't know if
No, go right ahead. No, please continue.
Yeah, I think the other thing that comes up for me is, it's wonderful that people are gaining access to a lot of works online, but it can in no way replace live performance. They're not interchangeable.
Right.
In the same way that you see an audience member pick up their cell phone and start recording things that they're not going to watch when they get home.
Right.
It's like be present. Allow yourself to acknowledge that every aspect of your surroundings are part of the live presentation. And I think that's one of the things that's so special with the space that our work has been presented at CAC, because it's such a really unique space. And it's something that is really bringing forth the community in really exciting ways. And I think Lori and everyone at the CAC has done a really great job of bringing artists to see artists from outside of the community in a way that kind of like keeps that conversation going and keeps that kind of like great cyclical energy that's needed for art to be sustained.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more that in your thoughts about the field in general, but also about CAC in specific, in that the space itself is in a huge warehouse, and yet it feels like a very intimate black box. You have a lot of space to move, but it feels like you're able to speak very intimately with the viewers, with the audience. And so in that sense, the space itself is really special. But also the fact that it's housed, that it's part of a larger complex of art making and art viewing and art visiting and art seeing, where there's visual art and performance all combined together, and where viewers can come and ask them, or have the questions asked of themselves, whether it's the visual art or performance art. And also, again, the purpose behind running a vibrant performing art space in such a vibrant city. New Orleans in and of itself, and I think that's one of the reasons that I felt so at home in New Orleans, was that the city has always been incredibly welcoming. I always found Southerners in general, but folks from New Orleans in specific, really welcoming. They treat you like family, and it feels like that culture is also a part of the CAC New Orleans space. And so again, it's that duality of a vibe of home, but also the kind of nuts and bolts of home, a space to perform in, an audience that's eager to engage. That's our artistic home. That's in an intimate space that can do a lot of things technically. Like for you and I, that's a real sense of artistic home. And then combined on top of that, it's all those intangibles. A welcoming place to investigate and explore and ask questions. And so I hope that's what survives from COVID, is that broader purpose.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going along with all that, I think like part of the thing that makes New Orleans so welcoming is that there's a sense of pride there.
Yeah.
You know, a pride in their history and this kind of sense of home that I really dig. I think I'm someone that I just love history, but I love when people will take me around their city and their community and give me the history. Tell me like the history of like gay and lesbian bars in your city, in your community. Like, tell me the history of like Black folks all throughout like multiple aspects of your community. How many generations, do you have in your family that have been rooted in your city? All of those things, like, really kind of, in some ways, they kind of like come into my spirit when I actually get the opportunity to perform, if I'm performing myself, or in the way in which I think my dancers like to kind of navigate a sense of community and kind of put that forward on stage. I think a lot of this experience of not only what we're dealing with right now, but also the welcoming nature that I've experienced and if you've experienced will definitely come through when A.I.M comes back, because luckily for me, I get a chance to dance on stage myself. So I've definitely, I feel a lot of what's happening finding its way in my body and in my spirit even now to make it to the stage.
Yeah. Well, on that amazing note, thanks, Kyle. It's been really great speaking with you.
Oh yeah, always great to speak with you.
And sharing all that about, because I think the thing about living in an era of social distancing in California, and I know that in New Orleans as well, it's really, it's a legal thing. We can't get together, nor would I particularly want to right now. Because unfortunately, LA County, the curve is still going up. We have yet to flatline, much less to start going down. So for the time being, isolation is the thing that's going to ironically make it able for us to stay in, to have homes in the future and to have a sense of self. But still, it's really great to connect even electronically and realize that we're all in the same boat and trying to figure out these issues around creativity and purpose and the true nature of home as an artist and a person. So thanks for that conversation. And thanks to the CAC New Orleans for making it happen. Bye, Kyle.
Bye.